Welcome to the first episode of the course Introduction to Cultural Heritage. Let's embark on a captivating journey to unveil the fundamental concepts and issues surrounding cultural heritage. In this episode, we will explore the origin of the cultural heritage concept and delve into its development, from its emergence in the 18th century to the widespread public awareness of preserving a material past, as well as the scholarly attention dedicated to this field. What is cultural heritage? A well-erected monument, a magnificently crafted cathedral, a Neolithic pottery jar unearthed from the archaeological site and displayed in the museum case, an old necklace received from grandma as a gift, a cultural tradition that has continued for centuries. All of these are cultural heritage. There is one thing they share in common: the time span. In other words, the historical depth. So, could everything from the past be called heritage? To answer this question, we need to first find out how the idea of heritage is conceptualized. Etymologically, the English word heritage originates from the medieval Old French and Latin terms that describe the property inherited by a person's heirs. It refers to property, estates, possessions, and titles that was handed down from one generation to the next, often within a family lineage. Over time, the concept expanded to incorporate ideals of legacy, tradition, and history as well. In the 18th and 19th centuries in North America and the UK, the term was closely associated with the large estates owned by the wealthy landowning class. During the 19th and early 20th centuries, the use of the term broadened and increasingly came to refer to a cultural or intellectual legacy. Then what has caused this change? The 19th century was a time marked by significant social and cultural changes. The advent of the Industrial Revolution and the subsequent urbanization led to the displacement of numerous individuals, resulting in a loss of social and geographical stability for many. Societies sought to reconcile their past with the rapid transformations of the present. Heritage became one of the solutions. Let's first know two most influential cultural elites in 19th century England: John Ruskin, a prominent art critic and social thinker, and William Morris, a leading figure of the arts and crafts movement. Employing a romanticist approach to cope with the changes and challenges brought about by urbanization and industrialization, John Ruskin advocated a rural idyll aesthetic, in other words, ancient buildings that manifested the cultural taste of the Victorian-era country elite. His writings and lectures emphasized the need to recognize the aesthetic, cultural, and historical value of architectural heritage. Ruskin's influential work, such as The Seven Lamps of Architecture, helped shape public opinion and fostered a greater appreciation for architectural heritage. William Morris furthered the cause of heritage conservation through his activism and practical endeavors. He wrote that anything which can be looked on as artistic, picturesque, historical, antique, or substantial, any work, in short, over which educated, artistic people would think it worthwhile to argue. Their claims have been greatly amplified and had a profound impact during the institutionalization process of heritage conservation. The cultural connotation of the term could be seen as a response to the challenges brought about by industrialization, urbanization, and the erosion of traditional ways of life since the late 18th and early 19th century. It is important to point out, although an awareness of the past had grown, the conservation idea was not initially addressed. The attention to conserving or preserving the material past is closely associated with the rise of archaeology and the role it had actively played in the institutionalization process of heritage. Since the mid-19th century, when the trend of legislating the protection of ancient monuments, religiously, architectural, and historically important buildings occurred. Countries in Europe, such as the United Kingdom and France, began enacting legislation to protect monuments and historical buildings. Why archaeology? Because archaeologists, equipped with scientific methods and highly advanced apparatus, were experts of ancient sites, old buildings, and antiquities. They helped to decide what needed to be protected. In this way, archaeology established the foundation of the heritage identification and conservation criteria and formed a strong foundation for subsequent developments. Aesthetic and historical values, ethos of the European conservation then spread globally, finding synergy with the American preservation movement in the United States, while being imposed as part of colonial rule in countries like India. These principles became embedded in international charters and eventually incorporated into the World Heritage Convention, which are now widely accepted. UNESCO, the leading international organization responsible for promoting cultural heritage preservation, prioritizes the historical value in identifying a heritage site. When defining heritage as our legacy from the past, what we live with today, and what we pass on to future generations, UNESCO specifically points that monuments and groups of buildings of outstanding universal value from the point of view of history, art, or science, and sites of outstanding universal value from the historical, aesthetic, ethnographical, or anthropological point of view, could be recognized as World Cultural Heritage Sites. We can learn from the international agreement that it is globally acknowledged that historical materials of certain value or values should be preserved for and transmitted to the future generations. Now let's get back to the question raised in the beginning. Is everything from the past cultural heritage? The answer is no. The current popular definition of heritage confines the concept to materials with certain well-acknowledged values. The emphasis on aesthetic, artistic, and historic value arose in response to the drastic social changes of 19th-century European society. The cultural elites at that time sought insights from the past to reconcile with their present in a very selective manner. Heritage is, therefore, a selective use of the past at present for the future.